Hello my fellow kin, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another unit analysis video. In today's episode we'll be taking a look at one of my top 3 favorite units in the entire index, the Einhyr Champion. As always, we'll take a quick look at who they actually are, find out how to best equip them, how to best use them, discuss some stratagems and combos, and wrap the video up with some important considerations to keep in mind for when you decide to run this unit. But before we go any further, as always, I want to give a quick shout out to our community Discord server, which you could join free of charge to get in on all things Votann related, talk tactics, share photos, and even get your pictures featured in my weekly videos, as we see here with this lovely squad of Hearthguard and accompanying Einhyr Champion by our Discord user Dave. So if you want in on the fun, don't forget to join our server using the link down in the description below. Okay, so who are the Einhyr Champions, the E-Champs as everybody calls them? Well, these guys are literal champions of the kin. They are esteemed warriors who are given these incredibly powerful exosuits with these thrusters in the back, and they have these ram shields. It is literally called a ram shield, which is really cool because on the tabletop, they're an absolute beat stick. And they do really feel like a battering ram unit. It's really thematic and on point. In terms of how you can actually equip and run the unit, I have the data card here on the screen for you, and what we see is that their movement speed 5, toughness 6, 2-up base save 5, wounds leadership 7, and OC 1. So pretty standard character profile here with the higher toughness, saves, and wound characteristic for being inside of the exosuit armor. For ranged options, you only have one choice. It's the stock Autok pattern Combi Bolter, 24-inch range, 4 attacks, BS 2, strength 4, 0 AP, 1 damage, whatever. And then for melee, this is where things get really interesting. We have two choices being the Dark Star Axe, which is a pretty badass name. This is 6 attacks at weapon skill 2, strength 6, -2, 2 damage. And then we have the Mass Hammer, the Swole Hammer itself at 3 attacks, weapon skill 3+, because it's so heavy to swing, strength 12, -2 AP, D6 +1 damage. Absolute beat stick. In terms of abilities, we have two main ones here. We have Exemplar of the Einhyr, and that means while he's leading a unit, you could re-roll the charge rolls made for that unit. Absolutely massive. We then have Mass Driver Accelerators, and each time this model ends a charge move, you basically roll a dice, and on a 2+, the unit that you're charging into takes D3 mortal wounds. If it's a 6 instead of a 2+, then it's D3 +3 mortal wounds instead. So for warrior options, we have two choices. We have a Teleport Crest, which while he's leading a unit, allows him and his unit to go into Deep Strike. And then the other option we have is the Weaverfield Crest, which gives him, the bearer, a 4+ invulnerable save. So pretty similar to what we see with the regular Hearthguard squad. And so all of this data sheet with the reliability improvement on your charges, the mortal wounds, the damage he natively brings comes in at just 60 points, which is a fantastic price point for a unit like this. Alright, so before we talk tactics, I want to take a quick moment to look at the math between our two loadout options for melee weapons of the Dark Star Axe versus the Mass Hammer. And I put the stats for you again up on the screen. So the Dark Star Axe comes in at 6 attacks, weapon skill 2, strength 6, -2 AP, 2 damage. And the Mass Hammer is 3 attacks, weapon skill 3+, strength 12, -2 AP, D6 +1. And of course our assumptions as always are that our targets have 2 judgment tokens, because more than likely we're rushing this with our Hearthguard unit, and we're going to assume it's bare bones, meaning that the unit isn't benefiting from any kind of stratagems that provide defensive bonuses. So plugging the two numbers together, we get tables that look like these. And as a quick reminder for you, the numbers that you see in the tables that are black represent the total amount of unsaved wounds that go through, meaning the total amount of failed saves your opponent makes. The numbers that you see colored right underneath each one of those black numbers represents the total amount of damage we inflict, so the raw damage that goes through, and the number here is simply the amount of unsaved wounds multiplied by the damage characteristic of the weapon profile. And what we see here across the table is that the Mass Hammer provides more raw damage universally. However, there is a benefit to the Dark Star Axe, and that is the volume of dice, so the amount of unsaved wounds you push onto your opponent at damage 2. In this case, we see that across the table as well, except for at the toughness 12 level, we do get more unsaved wounds with the axe. If we want to look at this in a little bit more of a granular level, let's take a common profile being a 3-up base save. So I have here some different colors on the screen for my borders, and we're going to start off with the yellow borders first. These are numbers that are much closer and more comparable between the two profiles. So starting off with the Dark Star Axe at less than toughness 6, 3-up base save. We have 2.78 unsaved wounds that go through, resulting in that damage multiplied by 2, so 5.55 damage. Conversely, when we look at the Mass Hammer, less than toughness 12, so that falls in this category, 1.39 unsaved wounds, 6.25 raw damage. So we get about half the amount of unsaved wounds that go through, but we still get 1 extra point of damage on this. Looking at toughness 6, so just moving down the table, we have 2.22 unsaved wounds that go through with the Dark Star Axe, resulting in 4.44 raw damage. And then when we look at the hammer, again, same target here, less than toughness 12 in the yellow table, we have 1.39 unsaved wounds and 6.25 raw damage. So what we see here is the same trend. We do get more unsaved wounds with the axe by about 1, but the damage is decreased. And as you may notice, as we descend through this table, going to tougher and tougher targets, the amount of damage inflicted by the axe is reduced proportionately, meaning that we get more value out of the hammer, which makes sense, right? Because it's strength 12 and it has a higher damage profile. We really see this discrepancy take form when we look at something that is that elite or high toughness target. So greater than toughness 6, less than toughness 12, or toughness 12 itself. We have 1.67 unsaved wounds, resulting in 3.33 damage, or at toughness 12 level, 1.11 unsaved wounds, or 2.22 damage. Conversely, with the hammer at this stage, which is the green table, we see that we get 1.11 unsaved wounds, so matching that of the toughness 12 with the axe, and we get 5 damage, so more than double. So this thing does punch pretty hard. Looking at some more specific examples, if I plug in a group of Primaris intercessors, we get less than toughness 6 with 3-up base save, 2.78 unsaved wounds that go through, resulting in 5.55 damage. So this means if I swing into intercessors with a Dark Star Axe, I'll kill between 2 or 3 of them outright. Conversely, with the Mass Hammer, I'll only kill about 1 to 2. Again, I'll kill them outright, but I kill about 1 less each time. If we look at something that's a little bit tougher here, like a War Dog, for example, which sits between greater than toughness 6 and less than toughness 12, we do see the Dark Star Axe gets 1.67 unsaved wounds, resulting in 3.33 damage total. However, with the Mass Hammer, we still get fewer unsaved wounds that go through at 1.39, but they are significantly more impactful, being almost double the amount of damage at 6.25. This means when you consider that you're going to also be doing mortal wounds on the charge, which is an average of about 2 mortals, you will probably do 8 damage outright to a War Dog with just this character alone. Pretty good. And we basically see this exemplified across all save characteristics for tougher targets, things that are higher than toughness 6 up to toughness 12, where the total amount of unsaved wounds disparity is significantly smaller and tighter at this stage between the axe and the hammer, but the damage characteristics that we get with the hammer are much higher. What this kind of suggests is that there really isn't all that much incentive to take a Dark Star Axe over the hammer. The primary reason being is that yes, you could have a little bit more damage into more swarmy units, so things that are like Horde-esque or MSU squads, for example, where you want to pick up like an extra model, which you will do, you will pick up an extra model or 2 for sure, but it's just not really worth the trade-off of losing this higher punch-up ability that you get by including a hammer. I would much prefer having the ability to potentially one-shot a knight that I charge versus killing reliably 1 extra intercessor a turn, especially when you consider that the shooting output that the Hearthguard unit usually brings is flexible enough to help you pick up some of those weaker Horde targets and not necessarily require you to kill those things in melee. When we look at invulnerable saves, it's basically paralleled to what we have on the left-hand side because both of these weapons are AP2. Again, the AP is the same here, so the differences we see across the invulnerable saves can just simply be omitted. They are the same as you would see on the left-hand side. Proportionate. All this to say, I would personally recommend you always run the hammer. There really isn't all that much incentive to take the axe as we're trading away that extra punch for basically the ability to kill an extra Primaris intercessor. Alright, with the weapon options out of the way, let's take a look at the leadership role this unit can take. So I did mention that he can lead Hearthguard, and he can exclusively only lead Hearthguard. So what benefit do you actually get by running these two units together? Well, by including a character with the Hearthguard unit, you of course unlock their ability to have the native -1 to be wounded if you're a higher strength characteristic, which is really good. It provides a lot of utility and just a lot more efficiency for the unit because they have more staying power. It also gives them, as we've seen, a massive melee impact. It's a really solid punch because now you get to do D3 mortals on the charge, potentially D3 plus 3 mortals if you get lucky, or 0 if you get unlucky. But on average, you'll do D3 mortals on the charge, and you'll have some nice native damage increase that comes through, simply by including a hammer. It really allows the unit to punch a little bit more hard inside of melee, because the Hearthguard unit is primarily here to shoot. They do have some melee output, but it's kind of inconsistent when you think about it because they only have 2 attacks each. At least by including this character, we help ensure that when they do connect and they do punch something, we have that extra damage just to help push through and make sure we kill the target. The other thing, which can't be overstated enough, is that native ability to reroll charges through the E-champ leading the unit. This is massive. Your 9-inch deep strike charges, if you're not rapid ingressing for some reason, a lot scarier for your opponent. It makes everything a lot scarier, and for you it makes them a lot more reliable. It gives you that really good CP economy as well because you don't have to keep CP banked to make a critical charge because you know your unit will be able to reroll charges for free. So you do get a lot more value out of this squad, and for your overall gameplay flow because you don't need to allocate your resources to help ensure that this unit connects. Natively, you're providing a lot of value because they're -1 to be wounded now, they have extra durability, they have extra damage, and they have a rerollable charge. Another thing I threw in here is that there is a potential to cheese with your out of phase damage. And how this works is that you charge the unit into something that's probably going to be on like 2 wounds left. You kill it out of phase after your charge move happens with your mortal wounds, and then because this is an out of phase damage, you're still eligible to fight, so you can pile in with your unit. And now you pile into something that is 3 inches away, and you tag another unit, and you're able to fight them even if they weren't the declared charge target because you piled into them and your unit is eligible to fight. Okay, so what about the Cal? The Cal is a competitor for the leadership role of the Hearthguard unit. They do compete for the same spot, so which one should you include? Well, in my opinion, the mortals, the extra damage to punch up, the native ability to reroll charges, the cost of the unit, all of this simply outweighs any benefit that the Cal offers. I think for a 5-man unit, it's definitive. You absolutely do not run a Cal with a 5-man unit. You take an E-champ instead. It is just simply better in every way. And I would like to argue that you still take an E-champ even if you're running a 10-man unit as well. So we could run this guy leading a unit, but what about solo? Does that have any teeth? How does it work? Well, a solo E-champ can be done. I haven't seen it too often, but it does play a role in the list. It could double as both a utility piece and a trading piece. You do some secondary actions, it could be a threat for your opponent, and if you do want to throw him into a fight, we have seen that he does do significant damage on his own, enough to almost kill a baby knight, or almost pick up a whole squad of intercessors with the mortal wounds and his weapon. So I do see a world where someone can run this solo. It's uncommon, but I do think it has a place, particularly in more of an MSU Sagittar build. Even if you can't put them inside of a Sagittar, I think you probably just leave them on the table. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about how this kind of playstyle works, I have an interview on the channel with Shazaman Kazmi, who ran this at a tournament he played, 2 solo Einhyr champions to really great efficiency, coming second place at the event. Alright, now for how to actually deck this guy out in terms of enhancements. I think there are 2 tiers of enhancements you could take. Tier 1 is probably your 2 best choices, Appraising Glare and Grim Demeanor. Now, Appraising Glare, I think, is an auto-include for any list you're running. Just a native ability to give judgment tokens out to multiple units, whatever is on an objective marker, for the purpose of that turn, is extremely powerful and just helping you get a lot more output through your army. Grim Demeanor is another enhancement that I think is very strong on the E-champ specifically because it allows you to ignore all modifiers. So things like half damage, for example. If you throw this guy into a Catan, Well, now the Votann doesn't ignore his half damage, so if you do connect with your mass hammer and you roll really hot on the dice, well, he's eating all the damage. So pretty powerful, I think, if you run this on the unit, as it provides just a lot more efficiency. For tier 2, I think that you could take Wayfarer's Grace. I've done it in the past because I had spare points. I've seen other competitive lists do it as well. Usually you're just taking this because you have 25 points left in your list, but it does allow you to get back up on a 2+ once per game, which again could be helpful. You have a beat stick character, he's annoying to kill. I could see this being run when you're running them solo, for example. Now you got to kill him twice. Could be really annoying. The other enhancement that could be possible is a long list. I do think a long list might have some play if you're sitting on 15 points, you're not really sure where to put it. Slap it on this guy with his Hearthguard squad. They will kill whatever they're trying to hit, and that means another target that they see will get a judgment token added for free. Combos very well with Appraising Glare, which means something can very easily and quickly jump up suddenly from 0 to 2 tokens if they're on an objective. Again, these would be tier 2. I would really only include these if I had the spare points, and I wouldn't try to build a list around having this in. Versus tier 1, which I do think, at least for Appraising Glare, is basically essential. For stratagems, I think there are 3 big stratagems that you'll be using with this unit and this character. The first one is Warrior Pride. So Warrior Pride is 1 CP, and for your fight phase, the unit that's in combat, you increase their melee AP based on how many tokens the enemy target has. This could be a really solid way of ensuring that whatever vehicle you're fighting just dies. If it doesn't have an invuln, it's dead. You pop this, 2 judgment tokens, your mass hammer's AP 4, it's killing it, it's dead. So I think this could be something that's pretty cool to play around with. The second stratagem that I think has a lot of merit for this unit is Rapid Ingress. If you're going to use Rapid Ingress with Votann, you're probably using it on your Terminators, and it's being led by this guy. It's just a very solid way to get board presence and position yourself to be ready to respond on your next turn if you could get a really good spot. This also combos exceptionally well with Heroic Intervention, which is now just 1 CP. So you have a very interesting combo on your opponent's turn for just 2 CP. You Rapid Ingress down behind something your opponent charges, and then you heroically intervene inside of it, and now suddenly they take mortal wounds because of the E-Champ, and they have to deal with a mass hammer as well. This could be a very powerful combo. Okay, so wrapping the video up, some considerations in summary. I think that the E-Champ is a fantastic little bruiser character. Coming in at just 60 points, he provides a ton of value to your Hearthguard and your list as a whole through his CP economy, saving you CP for your reroll charges, being very cheap at 60 points, having a ton of damage with the mortals, being able to cheese combat phases, and just simply providing a lot of damage through his mass hammer. 2 very powerful combos, as I mentioned. First, the cheese strategy, where you charge something, do mortals, and then pile in to another target and be able to attack it. And then, of course, the Heroic Intervention, which for 1 CP you Rapid Ingress, and then for another CP you simply roll your charges to go inside and then do mortal wounds and fight your opponent with a mass hammer. It's a very powerful deterrent, or it could be a very powerful swing in your favor. I do think that he has a lot more value when you run him with 5-man units. This archetype just feels a lot tighter, a lot better. You have these guys coming out of land forts or out of deep strike, smaller pockets. You get more reliable charges. And because of the amount of damage he provides, it doesn't really feel like it's wasted. If you had a 10-man brick, conversely, maybe you don't actually need his extra swings from the mass hammer to do work because you have 5 extra Terminators inside of the unit. I do think, however, that if you do decide to run 10-man bricks, try to E-Champ out, because I still think he's probably honestly better than running a Cal, especially since you're going to be running Vulcanites. The last thing I want to mention is that, unlike the Cal, where you're probably just going to take a single one in your list if you run any at all, the more the merrier with the E-Champ. I think that this guy's great, and if you can get multiple for 60 points and you have MSU where you're running a lot of Hearthguard bricks, throw them in with them. They're going to all gain a ton of value from this, a ton of efficiency and output, and I really think he's a solid choice for your competitive list. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the E-Champ is one of my top 3 favorite Votann units of the index so far, and I hope I made a compelling enough case as to why you should try him out in your lists. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment for me down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.